Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. The Her Version podcast is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I'm speaking with an amazing woman named Claire Thomas. After years of being all the things to all the people, totally get that, saying yes and feeling disempowered and unfulfilled, Claire stepped outside of her comfort zone and started her company, Reaching Your Best. Drawing on her personal and professional experiences, it's her mission to help reawaken women to their power so they can reach the best version of themselves and feel fulfilled with a sense of purpose. Yes, she draws on coaching, mentoring, and mindfulness techniques and some of the latest neuroscience techniques to help her clients reawaken their power. So excited to have this woman spend some time with us. Welcome, Claire. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. And thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes, 100%. Before we jump in, because most of our viewers are from the US, tell us where you are. What's going on? Where are you coming in from?
Yeah, I'm the other side of the pond. I'm in the UK, about an hour outside of London, so in the county of Kent.
I love it.
If that helps people with their geography a little bit.
Born and raised?
Yeah. I have lived in many countries, but pretty much most of the time here. Yeah.
I love it. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for being here, for taking some time out of your day to sit down with us, share some of your past journey and some of the nuggets of information that you've acquired on your journey. One of the things that I love to dive into when we first start this podcast is obviously we want to hear all the goodness that you have going on right now in your life. But I always like to kind of take a step back and talk about pivots, stories, struggles, things that have happened in your life that caused you to kind of alter the way that you were living. So I'd love to ask just, do you have a story that you could share with us where there was some sort of a pivot or some sort of a change in your world that happened to get you to where you are now? And then what did you learn from that story?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there have been many over the time, so it's hard to pick the one that has had the most impact because I think they all build on each other. Going back quite a long time now, when I was 18, one of the interesting ones was I went off to university, but unlike most of my peers, I went to university in France. And that was quite a big thing for anybody at that time. There were only a handful of us that went over to France. And it was just on top of the whole leaving home university experience, it was just being fully submerged into a completely different culture with needing to speak French fluently, having to do all of the admin required to find somewhere to live, get an electricity supplier, the gas supplier, all of those things. From day one, there were no halls of residence or anything like that. And I think that was really a big sink or swim moment for me. And it was, I had no choice but to be resilient and work out how to do everything and to ask for help. And I think that was a really good foundation and gave me courage to make some of the big decisions that I've made since.
Very awesome. Wow. What was the feelings that were happening during that time for you?
One of them was I had, whilst I might have felt like I was confident, I think I had a lot of doubt and insecurity, particularly around how I was going to communicate with other people, because I thought my French was pretty good, and I got there and realized that actually it wasn't as good as I thought it was. And there was so much that I didn't know. And it's really frustrating when you can't make yourself understood. So I think that was one of the really big challenges.
I bet 100%. When did you fall into, you're talking about, being uncertain and recognizing that now, maybe not recognizing it then as far as what it was, right? And realizing it's happening, but not necessarily recognizing what it was until, after. When did you fall into personal development or personal growth?
Gosh, I mean, not until more recently, like in the last 3-4 years.
Wow. How did you stumble into it?
It was at my last place of work. I was deeply unhappy and I knew I needed to do something different. And I was listening to a really good podcast we have over in the UK called Feel Better, Live More. And I was just listening to that while I was walking the dog, and just week on week, just hearing different stories and different thoughts. And that was inspiring me to read new books. And that just started to open up my mind to how I could make changes.
Fantastic. What made you even start doing that? Like, what was going on in your world where you decided to open up a podcast about personal development?
Well, I suppose it wasn't necessary that it was about personal development to start off with. It was more about health and well-being,
Okay.
and how to eat well, sleep well, and all of those things. And then as more and more guests came onto that podcast, the topics broadened quite a bit. So I've always been interested in eating well and making sure that I have a balanced diet, and I'm, all of those things I've always been very interested in. So that was what drew me to that particular podcast.
Nice. Is that stemmed from your parents, or is that something that you yourself have adopted, more of a healthy way of life?
I think it's probably because it's the opposite of what I perceive my parents to do. When it comes down to it. No, all my own initiative. I've always loved cooking. I've always been curious about different ingredients and recipes and the food that different cultures have. So I've just always explored and experimented in the kitchen. And I guess it just stems from there.
Wow. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have a younger sister.
Is there a difference in the eating between you and her, or is it similar?
She's a vegetarian, sometimes a vegan. But aside from that, which I suppose is a fairly big difference, we have a very similar diet. So we're both very interested in the same sorts of foods and the impact they can have on the gut and the body and that sort of thing. But
look at
she doesn't eat meat. Yeah.
Wow, that is so cool. Yeah, my family, like, we grew up the same kind of like shitty diet, not for any other reason other than just my parents didn't know any better. I mean, it's not really their fault. But yeah, I'm the oldest of 3, and I'm the only one that really concentrates on health and wellness. The rest kind of followed my parents' suit. So that's cool that you both kind of went the other way. That's awesome. What's the do you see a difference in the well-being of your children versus you growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's even comparable. Yeah, I mean, my eldest in particular will take a bowl of salad over a plate of chips, which is a really big thing. And we've always been very daring, I suppose, in the food that we offer to the girls. I've never wanted to cook separate meals for the children, because why would I do that if I have a job and I have to balance my life somehow? So I've always given them the same food that we eat. We eat quite spicy. So they just eat what we eat.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Wow. Yeah, that's the same with my son too. He definitely chooses healthier foods over anything else. Like, you don't see, like, he's 18 now, but you'll just see him walking around with a bowl of grapes, or like 4 tangerine oranges in his hand or something, versus a Snicker bar or Coke or something. So yeah, definitely the difference is recognizable,
Yeah.
as they kind of grow up. And it's so cool seeing it. I kind of did mine as an experiment. Like, I wonder what would happen if I just did it opposite,
Yeah.
and it totally works. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Throughout your journey, you kind of touched a little bit on work. Can you tell us talk about that a little bit, as far as the journey that you went through in corporate?
Yeah, I've been on a mega squiggly journey, and until recently, I used to see that as something to kind of be ashamed of. But more recently, I look back at it and think of all the different skills that I've picked up along the way and what I've learned. And so I'm much more proud of it and able to leverage all those skills. So, I mean, I was a management consultant for a while, worked in mobile telecommunications, traveled a heck of a lot, worked loads of hours. Gave that up a bit before I had children, retrained and became an interior designer, which is completely different, but there were some skill overlaps in that. Had my own business for 7 years doing interior design. Very stressful, didn't know how to manage the work-life balance. So thought I would pop back into the corporate world. So joined a telecoms regulator in the UK. Hated that, did that for 3 years. And then I was like, I have to make a change. So that's when I started dipping my toe into coaching, mindfulness, mediation, all things that just help deal with stress and become a lot more aware of ourselves and our lives.
Yeah. What was the thought process stepping away from the safety of corporate to go off on your own?
I mean, I had a lot of support from my husband to do that, and encouragement from him. He was, it impacted him quite a lot seeing me so upset all the time and unhappy with the job that I was doing.
Yeah.
And I've always feel like I've had an entrepreneurial spirit within me and an ability to get things done. And I suppose it was just once I'd found what I wanted to do, it was like, okay, well, I have to do this. I have to do this for my own sanity, aside from anything else. So I'm just like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm just doing it.
Wow. That's awesome. What was the first niche that you fell into? Was it what you're doing now, or was it something totally different?
So I've been refining over the last year. It's always been about helping women. Okay. That doesn't mean to say that I wouldn't coach a man, because I actually get on very well with men, and I've worked in very male dominated environments. But I'm a woman. I understand women. All of the things that we have to juggle in our lives wear us down, and many of us just don't know how to find a healthy balance between having children, having work, looking after ourselves, and that's what's important to me. So I've just become slightly more refined on exactly which type of woman.
That's awesome. When you think back through your journey or your story and the ups and downs that you've gone through, can you give us a example of maybe some steps that you take yourself when you are in the middle of some sort of a challenge, or you see one coming your way? What do you personally do in order to quickly move through that challenge or that issue and then on to a happier state of mind?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest tip and the go-to is to pause. Just pause. There's so much power in a pause. But it's remembering to do it, and it takes time. It takes practice to learn how to pause so that you stop your automatic thought responses. And when you pause, you give yourself that space to stop them and think about how you feel in that moment, what you're experiencing. And then in that moment, that gives you then the choice on what you're going to do, rather than automatically doing something subconsciously.
100, definitely. What else?
Trusting your gut. There are so many times when I haven't trusted my gut. I had some interior design clients once, and they took me on a big ride, and I'm pretty sure they deliberately manipulated myself and my business partner into a situation where they could then say, oh no, we didn't agree to that, and then negotiate their way out of paying our fee. And they bullied us. And it was a really horrible, disempowering experience. And looking back, we had said to each other, there's something about this project that doesn't feel right.
Wow.
And we didn't trust our guts, and we were proven right that, we really shouldn't have done it. So yeah, there's been a few examples like that where it's so important to trust your gut.
Yeah. Can you see a difference in the way that you handled that situation then versus how you would have handled it now?
I mean, totally. I would almost like to go back and relive that experience, just to really see how I could be present in the moment and not let that fear drive me, and to really stand up to a bully and say no, because that's what I would have done. And I would have presented evidence, and I would have been very factual, and I would have been very calm. It's easy to say that now, but I do believe I would be able to do a much, much better job of it now.
Yeah.
And he would have had a lot tougher time.
Yeah. It's such even though it's kind of like woulda, coulda, it's such an empowering place to know that now, if anything like that happened.
Yeah.
Be able to sustain that. That's awesome. What's the number one lesson that you've learned about life?
I think it's about being present. I think I'm naturally a very productive, efficient person, which makes me always want to be busy. And it's only been over the last couple of years that I've learned that to really properly, fully enjoy the moment, because there's so much that we miss when we're running around like a headless chicken, trying to get this done, tick, 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 done, done, done. And we get to the end of the day and it's like, flop into bed. I'm like, oh my God, thank heavens it's all over. But actually, when we stop and we appreciate the moment for what it is, we get so much more from it. And now is the only moment in time that we can actually have any control over.
Yeah. So true. I want to talk a little bit about limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
What are a couple or one or whatever of limiting beliefs that you've had to acknowledge and then shift from?
So one is around not being good enough. And I believe it's a pretty common one for most people, but I think it's caused like this hyperachiever effect in me, always striving to do as much as I can, because deep down I believe that I'm not good enough. And it's still taking, I think, and I believe it's a lifetime's work that's going to keep rearing its head in one place or another, that I'm not good enough. And I just have to, in those moments, say that's complete and utter bollocks, and say I am good enough, better than that, I'm awesome.
Yeah.
And just get over it. So that's one of them. Another one would be probably a fear of not being liked, which is probably a little bit related to not being good enough. But that whole, are people, if I say what I really think, are people going to like me?
Ooh, yes.
And that's really limiting, because it stops you from being who you are. It stops you from from saying what you really, really think and how you feel about something.
Yes. Can you give us an example of something that you feel passionate about, but you don't necessarily talk about a lot?
Ooh. I think I actually talk a lot about the things I am passionate about. I probably bore everybody with them. Health and well-being, eating well, exercising, meditating, These are all things I do every day and wouldn't be without them. They're like the foundation and the cornerstones of my life. But I think I'm always careful not to, you can't force somebody to do something.
Yeah.
You can talk about it passionately, but you can't make them do something if they're not willing and ready to do it.
Yeah.
So I will talk about them, but I will never force somebody to do something.
Yeah. I totally get that for sure. When I first got into coaching, the first niche that I got into was health and wellness. And yeah, people do not necessarily appreciate the constant pushing of living that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes people uncomfortable for sure.
Yeah.
At what point, you're talking about good enough and the limiting belief around that. At what point is somebody good enough? Because I think that you're right. This is something that so many individuals deal with, this constant thought of comparison and just not feeling as if they're worthy of having a voice or to stand or to be an entrepreneur or to really step into who they are. What's the truth? Like, at what point is someone good enough?
Now, right now. Right now. You're always good enough right now. Because now you are, yes, okay, you're the sum of everything that's happened, but then you have all the possibility there for you in the future, and you are who you are now. You don't know who you're going to be in the future, and you have many, many great qualities and assets right now, and that's what you have to believe in, because when you believe in yourself right now and you're good enough now, that means you can do anything.
Yeah. How does someone step into that? How does someone who's in a dark spot of, let's say, even just victimhood, of just a woe is me mentality, how does one step from that darkness and start to move towards a truth of I am good enough? What should be the first step that someone's taking towards that?
I think the first step is around awareness, and that awareness comes from understanding what it is that makes you believe that you're not good enough. In which situations. I do work with a company called Positive Intelligence, and they use saboteurs to help identify the areas in your life where you are self-sabotaging. And once you become aware of how you self-sabotage and you become aware of it in the moment, that's when you can start to make a shift. And then it's just constantly believing yourself. It's, daily affirmation. I am good enough. I am strong. I am brave. I am powerful. And just little by little, a small change every day over a period of time makes an enormous difference.
Yeah, definitely. What would you wish for?
World peace. Sounds a little strange, but I've been thinking about that a lot over the last 6 months. And I think if I boil everything down, that's what's the most important for me. And I know that I can't achieve that on my own, but with the collective power of other people that want the same thing, I believe that there's a place to make a real difference in the world. And so many things could be achieved with if everybody lived selflessly and put their egos to one side and cared deeply and compassionately about everybody else and was kind, then we would have world peace, and so many of the problems on the planet would go away.
Yeah, definitely. If everybody was coached through reachingmybest.com, would we have world peace?
Yes. If the whole world was, yes, absolutely. I really believe that. Yeah.
I love that. That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
That's what motivates me every day, is that it is possible. It's a journey. You can't just flick a switch and be there.
Yeah.
And it might not happen in my generation, but it's possible.
Yeah, for sure. So we've tippy-toed a little bit as far as what you do and what your business is, but I would love for you to share with us a little bit more deeply as far as what exactly, what your business is, what Reaching My Best stands for to you, and how you help all the humans.
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately it is about helping everybody become in touch with who they are, what their potential is, what their gifts are, and how they can leverage them to make the biggest impact in their lives, in the lives of their families, and ultimately in their community and then the world. But to do that, you have to go through a process of becoming aware of yourself, understanding your limiting beliefs and how you can work through them. And then you also need a direction to be heading in. You need to have a vision. You need to understand why you're here, and the difference that you want to make, what your values are. And everybody's values are slightly different, and that's completely okay. So I help my clients on a journey to understand both of those things, and then I'm right there alongside them while they're doing that. And that happens through short challenges. It happens through group sessions, one-to-one coaching as well. And I draw on coaching techniques, on mindfulness techniques. And as I say, I work with a company called Positive Intelligence to use their program as well.
That's awesome. In the intro, you were talking about neuroscience techniques. What does that mean?
So that's something that Positive Intelligence use. So based on cognitive behavioral therapy and neuroscience, when you have awareness in the moment of how you are behaving in a particular situation, say when you're self-sabotaging and you have negative thoughts, in that moment, you apply techniques like becoming very in touch with your senses. So, for example, if you just rub the tips of your finger and thumb together, just so you can notice the ridges of your fingertips.
Oh, yes.
If you pay exquisite attention to that, it brings you right into the moment. And that goes back to what I was talking about being utterly present and in the moment. And then from that space, you access the prefrontal cortex of your brain, where the sage or the wise person lives. And that gives you the space to be creative about the decisions you're making. So every time you do this little technique of being aware of how you're sabotaging, you bring yourself into the moment with a technique, and then you make a positive choice, you're rewiring your neural pathways so that after a period of time, you don't automatically go down the negative one, you start to go down the positive one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Talk a little bit more about negative and positive pathways, because people don't necessarily know what that is.
No, so a negative pathway is whenever you have a negative thought, a feeling, or an emotion. So when somebody says something to you and you feel triggered, and that triggering might be a thought, or it might be a tightening of your chest, a clenching of your jaw, your fists, or something. So any sort of reaction like that is what we call a negative, and most of those come from our internal judge, or one of the ways that we sabotage ourselves. The positive thoughts are like your inner Jedi, your sage, the wise person, your wiser elder self. How would they respond in a place where you believe that every challenge has an opportunity for growth or for learning? And when you step into that place, even if something terrible happens to you and you think, okay, there's something I can learn from this that is going to make me into a better, stronger person, set me on a different path. That is when we're operating in this sort of sage space of positivity. Positivity attracts positivity.
Does it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, you can choose to be negative, you can choose to be positive. So choose one positive thought and another positive thought will come along. It also takes 3 positive thoughts to counterbalance a negative thought.
I've heard that.
Yeah, scary.
Yeah.
So keep thinking positive thoughts.
Yes, I've heard that. And I've heard that even as much as when you say something negative to like your children or your spouse,
Yes.
something like that, it takes quite a few positive reinforcements to negate it, if ever.
Yeah.
I know there's some I'm still hanging on to, but
yeah.
that's
But
great.
I don't think we shouldn't beat ourselves up in those situations. I mean, everybody has a moment when their button gets pushed and they snap.
Yeah.
But then in that moment, you can recognize it and you can go back to your child and say, you know, hang on a minute. Taking actually back to what we were talking about earlier, if I snap at one of my children and I really stop and I think about why I snapped, it's normally because my limiting belief of not being good enough has got in the way, because I feel in that moment that I'm not good enough as a parent.
Wow.
And that is why I've snapped.
Wow.
And that's quite a powerful realization, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the coolest things about being a parent who is more self-aware in this arena is actually kind of that, the ability to be able to apologize and actually get it. Not just like apologize because you know that like you're supposed to apologize for the well-being, but actually like totally understanding the thought process behind it. I think is just so much more empowering to be parenting from this point of view versus my younger self.
I agree.
For those that are resonating with all of the goodness that you're sharing today and what Reaching My Best stands for and is doing in your community, where can people find you? Where do you hang out on social media?
On social media, my favorite place is LinkedIn, which surprises me. I didn't think it was ever going to be my favorite place, but I've met some amazing people on LinkedIn, including yourself. I also have a Facebook presence and a private Facebook group. I dabble a little bit with Instagram. I'm on all of them, but my favorite is LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Yeah. Under your name, Claire Thomas?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think it's Claire Thomas too.
Awesome. What are your big dreams for your business?
Aside from world peace, it's to empower as many women as possible, to help as many women as possible achieve their potential so that they can, I haven't said this out aloud publicly before, but if you imagine all of the untapped potential that women have and the social value that they could add if they started doing what they wanted to do, and you added all that together, that could like be billions of impact, billions, because it's a cumulative community impact. So that's what I want to do. I want to motivate as many women as possible so they can go out and be their best and have the biggest social impact as possible.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Why do you do what you do?
For that reason, because and when I'm doing it, I feel utterly fulfilled on the inside. It's like an adrenaline rush of it's like the happy hormones just flowing through when I'm helping people and I'm seeing them see things for the first time and achieve things. And when we can both look back together and see how far they've come.
Yeah. It's pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I so appreciate you being here, hanging out with us. Is there any closing thoughts that you'd like to highlight as we start to wrap up?
I suppose my main thoughts would be to everybody is just be yourself, be present, believe in yourself, and then you can really accomplish anything. And, if I resonate with you, you know where to find me.
There you go. I love it. Well, if you resonated with Claire and all of the goodness that she shared today, make sure you check out her website at reachingmybest.com. It is right above her head area and also in the description wherever you are watching us at. She hangs out predominantly on LinkedIn, but also obviously has all the other social media, but reach out to her, drop into her DMs. We love to connect people here on this platform in order to make sure that we all continue to rise. I want to thank those that are watching us live. Thank you so much for being here. If you are watching us on the replay, before you click away, make sure you hashtag replay so that we can see where you are watching us at and we can send you some love. This community is expanding every single day and is filled with people who are striving to do better than they did yesterday. For those of you that are new to this podcast, make sure you like and subscribe. If you have an amazing story to share, reach out to me at hernation.life. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their stories and inspire